Good day, and welcome to another episode of Agent X11, Hollywood Dark Journalist. Another light in this darkened world. I am your host, Penny L.A. Shepherd, and I am Agent X11. My co-hosts are David Zublik, Heather Day, Joan Renee, Chris Montgomery, Skip Press, Tom Althouse, Jessica Garza, Edward Medallion, Dr. Keith Abloh, and TJ Ward.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are tonight's entertainment.
Agent X11, Hollywood Dark Journalist, begins now.
I think we've lost Penny. So anyway,
There I am.
there she is.
There she
It's
is.
been a long, long day, and it is not over yet. My name is Penny L.A. Shepherd. I am Agent X11. Apparently, slotting away on this last Agent X11 for this Friday, which I began at 2:30 this morning, and I announced the date as being February 14th, 2025. Apparently, I'm looking for Valentine's Day somewhere, and it has not happened yet. So it's actually November 14th. It has been a long day, and it is 2025. Thank you for bearing with me. My co-host today, I'm just going to stay in the middle. That's what I'm going to do right now. My co-hosts are Joan Renee. She's a co-host on Awake Nation, as is Skip Press. Skip Press has his own segment on Agent X11, which is America's Golden Eon. AEG or AGE. I'm getting dyslexic. And Skip also is a prolific author. He just knows so much about everything. I myself say I know a little about a lot and a lot about a little. I'm going to make a t-shirt of that. Also joining us is Bob Pullen, who I had in my phone book as Bill. You know, it's the Bill guy, you know. Remind him of him. So and our guest today is Thomas Speciale, who I often refer to as A Speciale, which is wrong. Thomas A. Speciale is a senior advisor for the Director of National Intelligence at the National Counterintelligence and Security Center. That's NCSC. And welcome, gentlemen and ladies, this evening. And we'll start with you, Joan. How are you today?
Very good. Very good. And Penny, as a correction, I'm a former.
Former, yes. Okay.
Okay.
I have some
put that on the thingy.
questions. Yeah, I have some questions for you, Thomas. I'm finding some stuff that you did recently, and I just got to know. And so I'm looking forward to this meeting.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
And
I'm excited to hear that. That's good.
And then also we're gonna David and I are gonna have a meeting tomorrow to discuss doing a documentary for Thomas. He's got all of the components of it, so that's going to be our first documentary. We have a media company which we haven't actually. We've done some minor documentaries. I'm just going to play a little bit of this. It's a 32-second thing that I put together, so just check it out. That is our trailer for Relentless Productions. So, Thomas, you're going to be the first person under Relentless Productions. I guess eventually we're going to have to DBA that sucker. But for now, we're very pleased to try to put this together for you. And I think you're going to be pleased with the result. And let's go to Skip. Skip, how are you?
Excellent day. I'm on a rainy day and 2 more coming up. And so that's very conducive to writing and lighting the fire.
Very, very true. Very true. Bob Pullen, how are you?
I'm doing well. I want to make sure everybody can still hear me because I keep having technical issues.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, doing well. I'm not working nearly as hard as you are, Penny. So I managed to get in a little 10-minute snooze from the last show. Yeah, sorry. I probably should not have said that.
I don't think you should have said that. All right. And then Thomas, how are you this fine evening?
I'm great. I'm great. And I was just sitting by the fire smoking a cigar. My father-in-law's upstairs manning the fire for me, Skip. So I don't know if anybody out there smokes cigars, but
well, we're going to talk about that here in just a minute.
I did try that when I was a child, but I got in trouble for that. So no, but I know it's weird. I like the smell of a cigar. And I think I don't smoke them myself, but I like the smell of it.
There are good ones. There are good ones, and then there's stinky ones. But you know, they all have their place in the world.
We have to do a show where everybody's smoking a cigar.
Amen, Skip. Okay, let's do it. We're going to put that on the calendar. Penny, put that on the calendar.
I like it myself. I think it's a manly thing. It reminds me of, war times. It's kind of I'm just going to say it's a manly thing. You don't see many women with a big stogie. I'm just saying.
No, but we really appreciate them because I'm just saying, there is something. There's something to be said about a woman that can handle a cigar. Let's just say.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll put that in my list of things to do because I haven't smoked a cigar since I was 7.
Like the old Groucho Marx thing is a good woman is a cigar and a good cigar is a smoke. No, I don't know what he said. Some kind of joke there.
It's something like that with a cigar.
Yes, right.
You probably shouldn't go any further with that, I'm thinking.
Get out of the plane, eject, it's on fire. Okay, so we will start with, we like to have a good time because, we do talk about some dark subjects here on Agent X11, Hollywood dark journalist. But then we also have a segment, which it's called Patriot's Perspective, not Patriot's Perspective. I'm sorry, Patriot Crossroads. That's another show I work on. Good Lord, Betty. Okay, I'm just going to take a little break and we're going to play this. But Chris Montgomery is not here. He legit is on assignment. He did want to be here. So here's our segment for Patriot Crossroads.
Agent X11 welcomes you to Patriot Crossroads with Chris Montgomery.
Walking through the crossroads, feeling lost. Watching patriots, I know what the freedom's cost. Broken promises that shattered the night. Stars and stripes will burn down in the fight. Patriot at the crossroads, here I stand. Looking for the sign. faithful heart and an American plan. Silent waves smash against the worn out shore. I see dreams of glory, but there's
Agent X11's Patriot Crossroads with Chris Montgomery begins now.
And we are back with a hoorah. And we begin with John Renee. Did you have some questions you wanted to ask Thomas, or shall we ask Thomas to tell the audience who he is first?
Yes. Start with that because it's in part of that.
Okay.
I read his little bio here.
Okay. Well, I enlisted in the military when I was a junior in high school in 1987. And I served in the reserves for a couple of years. Then I went active duty. I've been, let's see, a military policeman, a field artillery forward observer, psychological operations specialist, infantryman, interrogator, a HUMINT technician, and I am still serving in the reserves as a senior human intelligence technician, warrant officer in the Army Reserves. In addition to doing that, and I deployed with Special Forces to Afghanistan. And then in about 2008 or 9, I came back to Washington, D.C. I was in Washington, D.C. during 9/11, and that's ultimately I reenlisted and went in the infantry after 9/11. But then I returned after 9 years of active duty time to Washington, D.C., and I joined the National Intelligence Community, where I served both in uniform and as a government contractor at the Defense Intelligence Agency, as well as at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. I call myself an intelligence hitman because I have done like literally everything you can do in the intelligence community, from being an analyst to also being a collector, a HUMINT collector, and then ultimately my last position in the national security community was I was a senior advisor for Tulsi Gabbard at the National Counterintelligence and Security Center, where I basically spent about 4 months doing a deep dive on the counterintelligence enterprise in the United States, and also becoming very familiar with the security enterprise, which is basically our security clearances, et cetera, for the U.S. government. And so I have the short and the sweet of it is I've been involved with the military for over 34 years and involved with intelligence for over 20. And I ran for U.S. Senate here in Virginia in 2019. I was the national spokesman for Vets for Trump, which is the largest grassroots veterans organization for the greatest president in the United States has ever had. And so now I am doing some national security consulting, working with companies regarding government contracting and providing national security analysis in a variety of different positions.
Okay.
So that's the short and sweet.
Before I get to my main question, what is a human? What do you call it? Human person.
Okay. Human intelligence is basically intelligence derived from cultivating human sources. So that in the military, that is very often on the battlefield, where you're dealing with people who have information about the enemy, collecting that information, putting it into a report, and then getting it to the leadership so that the leadership can make decisions based on that information. Another aspect of that is counterintelligence, where you are actually working to identify penetrations into our country or into our military apparatus, so that we can then defeat foreign intelligence collection on with regard to humans. So the reason that it's called human intelligence is because it's derived from people, whereas signals intelligence is derived from telecommunications and cyber and things like that. And then you also have other forms of intelligence, imagery. There's a lot of different types of intelligence, but satellite collected intelligence versus human intelligence versus cyber. So I do the human side, the human.
Okay, great. Now I'm going to get to my juicy question,
Okay.
and I want all the sort of details, because when I went and searched you, I found an article that said, "Meet the man who inspired former CIA Director John Brennan's viral meltdown," and that would have been on August 30th of this year. So can you tell me all?
October 30th. Yep.
What did I say?
Yep. October 30th.
October 30th. Yeah.
We're just in November.
Yeah. So I went to a conference at George Mason University, and the conference was titled The Directors. The attendees were supposed to be former CIA Director Hayden, former CIA Director or former DNI Clapper, and former CIA Director John Brennan. And so I attended that conference at George Mason just as an attendee. And my personal goal was to ask two questions. There were two questions that I wanted to ask him. My expectation was that I would have a sidebar conversation with him because I didn't really know they were going to take public questions. But ultimately they said, "Hey, we're going to take some public questions." And there was a reception afterwards. And so I wasn't sure that Clapper didn't show up. He canceled. Hayden was there. I was less interested in talking to Hayden, and I was more interested in talking to John Brennan. And so when they said we're taking questions, I made sure that I was very close to one of the microphones, and I was the first question of the evening. And I laid out my bona fides, and then I asked my question. My first question was, why did they use the Christopher Steele dossier, knowing that it was faulty, fabricated human intelligence in the intelligence community assessment regarding the Russian collusion hoax regarding President Trump in the months leading up to the election in 2016, and then ultimately after he was elected. And so that was my first question is why would they use fabricated human intelligence, which we never do, in an official intelligence document, and then present it to the American people through leaks to try and sway the 2016 election to vote for Hillary Clinton as opposed to Donald Trump. So I wanted to ask him that question: is why they use that. And of course, when I asked him that question, he had a meltdown. He thought I was there on behest of somebody. He didn't, he couldn't answer the question. His body language is very indicative of somebody who is deceptive and lying and terrified of the question. And ultimately he did not answer that question. The reason I was asking that question is because Tulsi Gabbard has released two emails. The first email came from Admiral Mike Rogers, who was the director of the National Security Agency, the NSA. And he is saying in his email, and you can find this on the DNI website under the Directors Initiative Group, the DIG, who I worked very closely with when I was there. And I still collaborate occasionally with the DIG. But the email that the series of emails that she released, the first email basically is Admiral Rogers saying, my analysts at NSA do not agree with this assessment, and we want to see all of the intelligence that was used for this assessment. And because NSA uses signals intelligence, so there should have been some indications of that information in signals intelligence. And they were saying basically there's no indications of this being true. And Clapper, DNI Clapper, comes back with a second email that says, hey, this is a team sport. We need everybody to agree to this, basically, or otherwise it's not going to work. And that email, those two emails, essentially, in my mind, are evidence of collusion between the director of FBI, Comey, the director of CIA, Brennan, and the DNI, Clapper, conspiring to make sure that this faulty intelligence was used in the intelligence community assessment that was ultimately given to members of Congress in the HPSI and the SISI, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. And then ultimately those congressmen and women leaked that information to the American people in the months leading up to months leading up to the November election in 2016 to try and prevent Donald Trump from becoming the president. It's very, very alarming. I've never seen any kind of email traffic like that. And people, the American people, need to realize, and this is sort of the rub of all of this, the important element of this is this was not done against Donald Trump. This was not done against Carter Page or even Michael Flynn, although other crimes, I believe, were perpetrated against those three people. The real crime is the leaking of the information deliberately to essentially throw shade on Donald Trump's candidacy and ultimately the presidency, that then was perpetrated for years afterwards with the Mueller investigation, that Donald Trump was a Russian source or a Russian asset of some kind, which they knew was not true. That is called offensive counterintelligence. And in my mind, what I think that they did was they carried out an information operation against the American people to try and get Hillary Clinton elected in 2016. And of course they failed. And so that was the first question, because that's a really big deal. That's a really big deal, Joe. Really.
Okay.
Big.
And what was the second question?
The second question was regarding the Hunter Biden laptop, because the FBI knew that the Hunter Biden laptop was legitimate. It was legitimate. The Hunter Biden laptop, just for your audience, I'm sure you guys kind of know about it generally, but I'll put it in, I'll encapsulate this from an intelligence officer's perspective. 3 laptops. And I just did another podcast with another intelligence officer a couple days ago, and he reminded me it was 3 laptops. But here's the interesting part about the 3 laptops. The 3 laptops were all water damaged, which means somebody deliberately tried to destroy the information on those 3 laptops. Those 3 laptops were taken by Hunter Biden to a repair shop to try and recover the data, more than likely because he wanted his porn collection more than anything else, is my guess. Okay. He wanted to recover his porn collection. But the curious thing is how do 3 laptops get damaged by water? I've never had 3 laptops get damaged by water. I don't know very many people who have. Somebody tried to destroy the contents of those laptops. But Hunter Biden, in his infinite wisdom, took them to a shop to recover the data. But then he abandoned those laptops. The guy recovered the data and turned the information over to the FBI. And the reason he turned it over to the FBI is because when he recovered it, he became the custodian of that information. It ultimately, once it was abandoned, it belonged to him. So he turned that information over to the FBI. When he did, the FBI very quickly determined that Hunter Biden's laptop was legitimate. And the problem was it had gotten out into the public. And so then the FBI, in their infinite wisdom, and I believe in an effort to prevent Donald Trump from being reelected in 2020, they started basically telling Facebook and Twitter that there was going to be a Russian influence operation to help Donald Trump get elected. And they wanted Twitter, Google, and Facebook to essentially silence free speech regarding the truth regarding this Hunter Biden laptop. Well, to make matters worse, the members of the Democrat National Committee, Hillary Clinton's camp, or the Biden campaign, essentially, went to some of their friends who were in the intelligence community or retired from the intelligence community, and they wrote a memo saying that the Hunter Biden laptop was likely Russian disinformation and that it was a Russian influence operation to help Donald Trump and to hurt Joe Biden. The problem with that is when they wrote that memo, they knew that the laptop was legitimate. They knew that the laptop was legitimate. And there's also other criminality in the laptop. It's not just his porn collection. It brings a lot of doubt on perhaps Hunter Biden's involvement with Ukrainians and Chinese, etc.
So another question.
What's that?
Did you find out that they knew when you were working in the DNI or your analyst position there, or how did you find out that they knew that this was?
The FBI had the laptop, and it was known very early on. I did not personally have that information. This has all come out sort of after.
Oh, this is okay. So this is public information now.
Yeah, this is all based on the public information that's come out afterwards with regard to from Tulsi and other whistleblowers and things like that. Okay. But the bottom line is Hayden, Clapper, and Brennan all signed this memo saying that the Hunter Biden laptop was likely Russian disinformation. They did that, again, as an offensive counterintelligence operation, essentially to help Joe Biden win the election against Donald Trump. And when they did that, that was, in my mind, seditious conspiracy to try and thwart a sitting president. Now, whether or not they'd be convicted of that, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. But in my rudimentary understanding, they should have never done that. And it's criminal at the very least. And so that was my second question is ultimately, why did you sign that memo knowing that it was Russian or knowing that it was likely legitimate? And here's the thing. People don't understand this. Brennan had a security clearance. So did Clapper. All of these people had a security clearance. And that memo was pre-pub approved by the CIA. So that means they approved the memo to be released. That doesn't mean that they approved the contents, but they did approve it to be released. And all of those signatories who had clearances should have said, is this legit or not, before signing it. They had an obligation, I believe, to the American people to know whether or not that laptop was legitimate or not before they signed it. And I have spoken to several members who did sign it, and they all basically said they did it as a favor to their friend, one friend or another, who said that they trusted it, and most of them regret ever signing that memo.
So, yeah. So what you're saying is that because they signed that, and whether they knew or not, they should have known.
Correct.
And so you need to hold them accountable for at least that. And so if they're not going to be prosecuted, then what punishment would they have?
Joan, this is a great question. And you know, one of the things that that I say is that what we need is we need a fulsome understanding of everything that happened, and we need an accountability. And that can only come from a DOJ investigation into what they knew, when they knew it, and did they, these are professional intelligence officers. They knew what questions to ask. Did any of them at any time ever say, we know that, is there evidence that they knew that it was false and they signed it anyway in order to influence an election? If that's the case, I believe that that's seditious conspiracy. Here's the essence of the seditious conspiracy concept. Seditious conspiracy does not require that that the person is a government official. It could be anyone that conspires to upset the government or to thwart the government or to interfere with the government. It could be anyone. Go ahead, Skip.
Or overthrow the government.
Correct. And he was in office. Trump was in office when they did that. Now, you could argue that, well, you know, it was just our opinion. Well, their opinion should have been a very informed opinion. It shouldn't have been just a regular citizen because that didn't have a security clearance saying something so egregious as it has all the earmarks of a Russian information campaign. Like you can't say that as a former director of CIA and not be taken seriously. So they knew that they were misusing their reputation to influence an election. And I believe that that is seditious conspiracy.
Wow. So, Bob, do you have a question?
I do, and I want to make sure you can still hear me.
Yes.
Okay. So, Thomas, is it all right to call you Thomas?
Yes, of course. Or Tom. Tom.
So
Tom.
before the show, I read over your bio, and to go back over your military background, needless to say, is very impressive coming from a military background. But there's a section here that spoke to me personally, and this is when I knew we were going to get along really well. It says, I smoke cigars, drink beer, drive a Jeep, ride a Harley, shoot guns, train soldiers and Boy Scouts, and I'm unafraid of speaking the truth to power, especially when it comes to protecting our country. Like, I am so on board with all of that except the Harley. I gotta draw the line there because I know my own limitations. I have zero coordination. I'm not gonna get on a motorcycle at my age. But everything else, it's kind of like I feel bad for the guys at the ATF because they're going after everything I love: alcohol, tobacco, and firearms.
Correct.
But I know that's kind of a joke. I know they're really not going after that. But I do have a question for you, and it's going back to the elections from the 2016 time frame and the Hillary Clinton emails. Now, with your background, you understand this. A lot of people that have not served in the military in a secure field would not understand this. But if I had done what Hillary Clinton did with having a private server with 30,000 some odd emails deleted, I would be at Fort Leavenworth so fast I wouldn't even be able to catch my breath off the airplane.
Yep,
that's right.
So I guess my question is, to your knowledge, is there any plans for the Department of Justice to go back and take another look at that, at the Hillary Clinton situation?
I know that I just recently heard that the DOJ, that there are some subpoenas that have been issued regarding Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, but it's mostly regarding their involvement with Epstein. But they also subpoenaed Bill Barr and some other people who were involved ultimately in the Epstein prosecution and ultimately his case. I think at this point, I don't see them going back and looking at the 30,000 emails, but you're right, Bob. I regularly have this conversation regarding, because it's not just 30,000 emails that she destroyed, deleted. It's that she was the FBI, even Jim Comey came out and said that she had mishandled top secret, sensitive, compartmentalized information on her personal server. And, ultimately they were told apparently not to prosecute Hillary Clinton. In all of my years, and I literally sat in an office immersed in TSSEI information, really, and other classifications even beyond TSSEI on my desk, in my filing cabinet. And in all of my years, over 20 years of military and national security experience, not once did I ever mishandle classified information, ever. And so when we look at something like, Joe Biden having classified information in multiple places, unsecured, including in boxes in his garage, and we see Hillary Clinton with a private server where she was editing classified information so that she could send it without the proper classification markings, etc. When she was Secretary of State, people in her office, etc. These are the kinds of crimes that we put people in jail for all the time. There are two tiers of justice, and Hillary Clinton had escaped absolute prosecution for destroying the emails. That was a crime in and of itself. Whether or not she could have been prosecuted for espionage or mishandling of classified information. Usually if you inadvertently mishandle classified information, like maybe, and I have done that. I mislabeled something one time. I emailed it out. I had to do a recall on the email. It comes back. We tell everybody to delete it. it was a really minor infraction. But when you do that, you got to report it to your security officer. You got to report it to everybody so that everybody at least knows that it got mishandled. Okay. And I've only done that once in my whole career, and it was just a mishandling. It was like an accident. But you don't accidentally do what Hillary Clinton did. You don't accidentally do what Joe Biden did. It doesn't happen. You cannot possibly mishandle classified information as egregiously as they did without knowingly doing it. Knowingly doing it, that's where you run into prison time. And they escaped prison time because the DOJ at that time didn't want to prosecute him because they wanted her to be the president. That's
what I was afraid you'd say.
Yes, I have a tweet. It was sent out by Amuse. It says, lawfare, Comey's political witch hunt defense just collapsed. Halligan produced Comey's own notes and emails linking him to illegal leaks through his Columbia contact. The Trump DOJ team has the receipts, and here's what it says in politics. Comey's political prosecution claims shattered as Halligan unveils damning leak evidence. Former FBI Director James Comey's mission to dismiss his indictment just backfired. Trump U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan filed exhibits showing Comey's own handwritten notes and Gmail alias Reinhold, it's Niebuhr, used to leak FBI info to the New York Times through Daniel Richman, a.k.a. Michael Garcia. Everybody has an a.k.a. but me. Bondi, Blanche, Patel, and Bongino uncovered the evidence hidden in FBI burn bags. The drive-by media called it politics. Turns out it's proof.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, burn bags, somebody, I would be, and I think we talked about this, Penny. I would really like to see what the forensic analysis is of those burn bags. Who handled them? How did they get in there? Because somebody may have deliberately made sure that those burn bags were not destroyed
against him, and then had that information and put it in an office that perhaps they thought, hey, maybe someday somebody's going to find this.
Correct. It's I at this point, it's just speculation, but I think that, every single desk in a SCIF, people have a burn bag, and usually about once a month, I would empty my burn bag. You fold it up, you staple it shut. It's a special kind of bag. You staple it shut, you put your name on it, your phone number, and the location, the desk that it came from, basically. You take it, you drop it in a bin, and it's supposed to go to the incinerator, right? And somehow these burn bags,
phone number on it.
well, because they, just in case because they do dump them out. Like my understanding is that they open the bag and they kind of dump it in a bin because they don't want to burn metal and things like that.
Yeah, I've done the burn runs. Okay, if I get a Coke can, I know who to call. Please don't put Coke things in your burn bag.
Right. You don't want to, it's meant to be just paper. So if people are putting metal or just like,
like a hard drive or something like that, burn this hard drive.
Right.
Yeah, you don't want to, anything.
Those have to be disposed of a different way. Those get disposed of a different way so that that a hard drive got destroyed or CDs got destroyed or whatever the case may be. Those go through a different process of destroying, that hard media goes through a different process than a burn bag. And so they want to know where that burn bag came from in case it's full of stuff that shouldn't be in there, basically, just so that they can make sure. And they got to be a certain weight and everything, like they got to be under a certain amount of weight because a lot of the security people that handle it may only be able to lift like, 10 pounds. So you don't want a 40-pound, you don't want a 40-pound burn bag full of binders and stuff.
The problem is if you get all that stuff in there, you can't mix it up in the burn.
I can't hear you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
You're not supposed to put dead bodies in there either, right? Because they're heavy.
You're not supposed to put what?
Dead bodies in a burn bag.
Yeah, no, I know dead bodies.
It won't fit. We tried. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. Bob, tell us about your experience with burn bags.
Well, what we would do is we would put, and this goes back decades ago when the Navy was still using teletypes. But when the message traffic came out on the teletype, you get two copies. one you tear off, you go make copies of it for whoever in the command needs a copy of that particular message, and then the other copy stays on the roll, right? And then a lot of stuff gets thrown in burn bags and put off to the corner. And we would get so much of this burn material that about every week we had to go out back. We actually had a 50-gallon drum barrel that was modified to burn this material. And it was like an 8-hour shift standing out there turning this barrel. This is old school stuff. We didn't have an incinerator, but you'd empty the bag out and burn all this stuff. And you have to kind of sort through it so you don't find, some stupid idiot threw a Coke can in there or whatever it is. You want to be able to take that out of there if you have to.
Right.
And we'd probably burn, I would guess, 50 to 100 bags a week. And this is a very small command. So at a larger facility, they'd probably go through much more than that. And then the hard copy on the roll, we would put those in a file and save those. And there were different time increments depending on the classification of the message traffic, how long they were retained.
And Bob, this is back in the day when you kept those. There was a hard record somewhere, whereas nowadays most everything is all digitized.
Sure.
I had a habit where I would only print things that I had because I prefer to edit by reading and marking things up.
Yeah.
Anything that if I didn't have to print it, I didn't print it. Like that was just my normal process. I didn't want to print things and have them laying around on my desk and stuff. It was just my normal process. I only printed things that I absolutely had to print and have a hard copy of. So
silly question, but what would happen if your command, etc., was infiltrated and the materials in the burn bag were actually acquired and taken off site? Does that ever bother anybody?
That would be pretty catastrophic. And we actually had an emergency action plan for that scenario. And I won't go through the whole thing, but there were actually action plans for in case we were overrun, destruction of ComSec material, destruction of, and I'm talking destruction of the hardware itself has to be destroyed.
Correct.
And all the paper stuff has to be destroyed. But yeah, we drilled on that. We had a plan, an emergency destruction plan just for that scenario.
So even if you had an infiltration with it, like a kind of like they would call it in the entertainment business, a Yuri, somebody that was in there, but then you were told that they were burning the burn bags, but in fact they were taking the intel and slipping it out of your.
Those people, Penny, are those people that have the responsibility, especially at the national security level in like the Beltway and stuff like that are handling this highly classified information. There's a very tight chain of custody. It doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. If it does happen, we have a catastrophic. There would be a catastrophic. It would be a catastrophic intelligence leak. The bigger
we actually maintained. We maintained what was called a destruction log, and so when we had to go out and burn material, there would be two people out there, usually a senior enlisted person with a junior enlisted person, and both parties had to sign off in the destruction log that 10 bags were destroyed on this date and time.
Correct.
And you have a two-party integrity is what we referred to it as. I think that's what the term was. And so any destruction like that always included two parties. So you had a witness to what was going on.
So the fact that these burn bags, and I've heard that there were 5 burn bags that had information in it. It's really not a lot. It's really not. It sounds like a lot to people outside the community, but really, but the mere fact that they weren't destroyed is the very interesting element of this. That somebody.
That was one of my questions. Why weren't the bags destroyed?
Yeah, somebody deliberately put them in this room for some reason, and I would be doing forensic analysis on those bags to try and find out who it was.
You said, Thomas, that and you both said that there's an accounting for it, for just select individuals. So I wouldn't think that it would be that hard to figure out.
You're right. I think you're right.
I won't say it would be easy, but I think that it would be relatively easy to know who was coming and going in that particular room, who had access. You could do a big investigation and figure out who had access to that room, what kind of lock was on that room. Is it recorded entry? Is it a CAC card entry? There's just a lot of investigation that could go into it, probably be very revealing. And I believe more than likely Cash and Dan are doing that investigation to try and determine that. But we may not know that. We may not know that for some time, because the real revelation is that some of this information was basically the contents directly from Jim Comey's personal desk, from his notes.
Right.
That's very, very interesting. And I think that there's going to probably be a lot more there than just, a few handwritten notes.
Could I throw in some conjecture here, Thomas? I think whenever I found out that those burn bags existed, it gave me renewed faith in the FBI, because I've worked with several FBI people over the years on media projects, and they're all great stand-up guys. So I thought they found those after Comey was gone, after Ray was gone, and probably Comey and or Ray thought those burn bags had been destroyed. But somebody fooled those two guys, or at least one of them, and secreted them away somewhere. You think
it's very possible?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Very possible.
Thomas, would that person then be up for criminal liability for what they did?
For not destroying them?
Yes.
No, probably not. Probably not.
I have another question about the 51 knuckleheads who signed the letter saying, Trump bad, we're good, we know Trump bad. What do you think there's ever going to be any repercussions on those guys, those people?
Well, one of the very first things that Tulsi did, and I was in the office when it happened, is they stripped all of them of their clearances.
Yeah.
That is catastrophic for people.
I love it.
Many of them were still serving in. Well, I hadn't even thought of this until just now, since you mentioned it, Skip. The woman who was supposed to meet me the day that I swore in on January 20th for the new administration, the woman who was supposed to meet me was one of the signatories of the memo. That happened on day one. And so I did not go in to the office until the 21st of January, because she was essentially stripped of her security clearance and removed from the premises on that day. And I hadn't even thought of that until just now, since you mentioned that. But so they will not get a clearance again. Right. And that is catastrophic for some of these people who have literally served for, in many cases, even more years than I have. But what they did was egregious. Like, what they did was deliberate, and it was an abuse of their position. And she was still serving in the National Counterintelligence and Security Center when I was sworn in, and she was supposed to meet me and then be my guide through the process. And she was removed from the DNI the day that I swore in, the day that Trump swore in. It was the very first memo, executive order that he signed, I think. And so, now, will they be prosecuted? I doubt it. I doubt they will be prosecuted, because what the argument would be is that it was a security violation and highly unethical. But I don't know that you would get them on criminal charges.
So I have another question on that, and I don't know if you know the answer, because some of these people that have done things, they also sometimes lose their pension. So I don't know if, do you know if that happened with these guys as well?
I doubt they would lose their pension. I doubt they would lose their pension. I think, I don't know. I think that's an interesting question. I don't know if the 51 intelligence officers that that sign this memo are subscribers to your effort here. But I think it would be interesting to give them a free subscription and ask them to comment.
Yeah.
You know, seriously.
Yes.
Ask, find them on Twitter, find them on Facebook, find them wherever they're at, send them a free subscription or a free access to the video and ask them to comment and see what they say.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be interesting.
Have free access to the videos.
Well, then just send them the link.
I mean, the process is coming out right now.
I have another question I've been dying to ask you, and then I'll shut up. But so we do this weekly thing on the presidents. We've been going through them. So we did Barack Obama today. And the last video that we played was Tulsi's statement. And since you work directly with her, I want to know your answer to this. Tulsi's statement about Barack Obama was behind it. You know, basically she's saying, we're coming after you, buddy. I think. How do you think that's going to turn out?
I don't know how it's going to turn out. He's got presidential immunity for all actions that he took in his official capacity as the president.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be able to get him on any kind of a criminal charge, I don't think.
But how about after he's president, though? I mean, you know,
even afterwards, yeah, I think it's going to be really hard to get him on a charge.
Okay.
My read of the principals committee notes, the memo that came out capturing the meeting in December regarding the direction to create the second ICA, the more fulsome Russian influence ICA that ultimately I was asking questions of Brennan and Clapper about. It appears to me that Obama was probably in that meeting and Comey was saying, hey, the Russians influenced the election. We have proof. And and Obama probably said, well, I don't see it here in this first ICA. So I want you to go and create a fulsome ICA with everything. Now, I don't, and we know that Obama knew that Obama knew that the dossier was bogus. He knew that. However, the way it was written into the ICA and then ultimately presented to members of Congress, et cetera, it sort of masked the fact that was the sourcing for why Putin had supported Trump and that Putin had directed it. So you're not going to be able to get Obama because he's going to have presidential immunity on this. And I think that the defense that these other guys are going to use is we were just doing what we were told. I have a very good friend, Ivan Rakelin. I love Ivan. Ivan from the very beginning has been talking about Nuremberg 2.0. And I do think that we very well may be looking at a sort of a Nuremberg type situation where these people are just saying as their defense, we were doing what the president said and the president has immunity. I don't know what the outcome will be, but I do think that we need to go through the legal process and do an adequate investigation to make sure that we have all of the facts regarding what I think is at the very least a seditious conspiracy against Trump.
So another question, and that is when they tried to arrest Trump, does that set any kind of precedence for against presidential immunity?
I mean, ultimately, the arresting Trump for while he was out of office for these the 34 felonies that he was charged with and all this.
Correct.
This is all just lawfare to try and prevent him, basically to try and overwhelm him with bullshit so that he would not run. I honestly believe that, guys. I think that this was all done to try and stop him from becoming the president again. And they knew that if it goes to the Supreme Court, that it'll be thrown out. When it goes to the Supreme Court, it will be thrown out. And they knew that. They knew that the same thing with the January 6th prosecutions. and the seditious conspiracy for Enrique Tarrio and Stuart Rhodes and all these guys. They knew that those cases would not stand up in the Supreme Court, but they wanted to essentially overwhelm them with lawfare. And they just didn't realize that Donald Trump, and I'm dealing with this same situation, guys. I am dealing with the same situation with the weaponization. I have 2 defamation cases with the Democrat Party of Virginia for saying that I was a notable insurrectionist who beat and bloodied law enforcement in D.C. on January 6th. They just made this stuff up, but they do that to try and deter you, right? And they are masters of lawfare. And see, we don't play that. We don't do these prosecutions that just eat up people's time and energy. But what they didn't realize was they just made him more committed to running. And, I remember having a conversation with my wife, and my wife's an absolute Trump supporter when he was going to run the second time. And total Trump supporter. And she's like, I hope he doesn't run again because we've been through so much, right? And I said to her, and I wasn't a Trump supporter way back in 2016. I didn't think he could win. So I just assumed Hillary was going to win. And I did vote for him, but I didn't think he was going to win. And the interesting conversation with my wife I was like, he has to fight it. He has to win, because the only way we can get to the truth of all this is that we get Donald Trump back in office, and he ultimately defangs the deep state and reveals all their corruption and all their evil. And, and he's in the process of doing that.
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned that they may be thinking about the 2028 election right now instead of thinking about the midterms. And I think they should stay tooth and nail in the fight all the way through the midterms, going after all this corruption and all this evil, because if they don't, they're going to lose the MAGA voter, which is what happened in Virginia. That's what
they
happened.
Also tried to bankrupt him and with that $500 million thing. And then he magically came up with money, stock deal or something like that. Remember that? And
it'll all get overturned in the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And they know that, but they will lie. You guys, the Democrats will lie, cheat, steal, and even murder you to stay in power. That is
Amen. Amen.
They will. They will. It's very dangerous. And I'm not suicidal, by the way. Okay, go ahead.
Bob, did you have something to say?
I do have a question, but Joan, I didn't want to override your, if you still had more questions, I didn't want to.
No, go ahead.
Jump in. So to change the topic a little bit, we know when the new administration came in earlier this year, and then all this came out about the auto pen, or is that what it's called? Biden's auto pen. And so I don't know how many pardons were signed by somebody other than the president. And I'm curious if you think there's any chance that any of those pardons might be overturned.
I hope so, because Dementia Joe was not running the country. Something people don't understand, okay, is that the government, oftentimes, in particular the Secret Service, protects the position of the president. Okay. They don't protect the president. They protect the integrity of the presidency. And so what I think we have is a problem where Dementia Joe is compromised probably even before he won in 2020. And out of sort of an obligation to the presidency, people use that as an excuse to not do the 25th Amendment on him, because the Democrat Party didn't want Kamala. So they weren't willing to invoke the 25th Amendment on Biden because they didn't want Kamala Harris to be the president, which is, the evidence of that is the fact that they ran Joe Biden, even though everyone in the whole world knew that he was suffering from massive, major dementia, and they still ran him all the way up until, he couldn't keep a thought during the debate with Trump, and Trump, basically turned to him and says, I don't even think he knows what he said. And he was done. He was done. That to me shows the level of corruption and evil in the Democrat Party, that they will run these candidates and it's because they can control them, guys. That is the and just so you know, the Republican Party does this too. The Republican Party does not support candidates that they can't control, that they have no control over. That is why they didn't want Trump, because the Republican Party had no compromise on Donald Trump. They didn't want him in 2016. They didn't want him in 2020. That's where the Lincoln Project came from. And they didn't want him in 2024. The Republican Party does not want Trump because they're just many of them, probably not as many, but many of them are just as compromised as the Democrats are. And it's just more of the Democrats because they're just basically an immoral group of people. They're easy to compromise because they're an immoral group of people. Drug addiction, sexual perversion, all these things that normally would have been disqualifying. We just literally had a guy win in Virginia for attorney general that was fantasizing about murdering his political opponents and his political opponents' children. And the Democrats will still vote for that guy. That shows the level of evil and corruption in the Democrat Party. But I would argue that the Republican Party also has a problem because they tolerate the same type of evil just on the far right. And that's why they didn't want Donald Trump, because Donald Trump isn't compromised. They can't control him.
Yeah. So Thomas, back to Bob's question is, do you think that this auto pen scandal is going to cause a domino effect where the people that participated in it who don't have that immunity may go down? Is because we've been getting hints that that's going to be the big thing.
I am hoping so. I will just leave it at that because I don't have any insight right now into what's going on within the administration. But I have talked to people in DOJ, and the auto pen situation is a major problem because if they knew that Joe was compromised, then everything they put the auto pen to should be overturned. Every single thing. And that means the J6 committee people, that means Hunter Biden, that means everybody that was given immunity doesn't have immunity. And that means now you're talking about going after like literally a lot of people. The problem is, as I go back to what I said before, and I've actually tried to reach out to Ed Martin because I really think we need to get in there and we need to get people to realize that we need justice and accountability. We don't want retribution. We want restoration. And does that mean that some of these people have to be let go and off the hook so that we can maintain a level so that we can control how retributive it looks? We've got to be very careful how we manage this accountability, that it doesn't, that I believe at least 60 to 70% of the American people believe that they should be prosecuted.
Yes.
So
And it's not I have
supposedly Hunter's pardon was legitimately signed, but I'm wondering if his nomination for the Supreme Court, Ketanji Brown, I wonder if that will be reversed since he didn't sign it.
That's interesting. That's a very interesting, Skip, I hadn't even thought of that. That's very interesting because we're talking about a presidential nomination that maybe he wasn't in charge of making that nomination. And if that was auto-penned or he was compromised and there's communication that we can prove that should not have happened, that it was picked by the head of the DNC instead of, or his campaign team instead of elected government officials. That's
Susan Rice.
Yes, I agree, Skip. I have a question. We had talked about the chain of command regarding the burn bag, but and I looked a little bit into it, but what was the standard operating procedure and the chain of command, if anyone knows, regarding the auto pen?
Well, my understanding is that there is a procedure where the president has to approve the use of the auto pen specifically on certain things. Most of the time, the auto pen is used for like nominations to or thank yous to government officials. It's not supposed to be used for significant executive level authorizations. And so the problem lie in, you know, who was approving the use of the auto pen? Was it actually Joe Biden or not? And I think regarding the burn bags, you're talking about chain of custody, not chain of command, but chain of custody. Yeah.
Yes.
And so regarding the burn bags, there is a process. And, you know, ultimately the only way to know whether that process was followed is to have, you know, Dan Bongino and Kash Patel order it to be evaluated and be investigated.
Skip.
That should be a Saturday Night Live skit. You know, a line waiting in line for the auto pen. It goes all the way out the West Wing. You know?
Yeah.
I was next.
you should submit that, Skip.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just write it. You know, I just the whole auto pen thing, it seems to have like kind of skated under the wire from the public. I know that it's still brewing and they're still trying to figure things out. But it seems like the news media these days, you have a story for a week and then it goes away. And people don't pursue it and they don't continue to ask questions.
This auto pen situation, believe me, is not being missed by the DOJ. It is. I am 100% convinced that they are looking very closely at this auto pen situation.
So you just think the media, the Mockingbird media, is like just disappeared it because it's out of sight, out of mind. But that it is being worked on, and we will hear from Trump about it.
Fortunately, we don't need them anymore. We have people like you guys because, you know, they can't keep this stuff concealed anymore. It's going to come out.
Remember Penny, on the Wake Nation, I said that Joe Biden's real name, he's a descendant of William Penn, you know, founder of Pennsylvania.
Oh.
It is. That's his real last name, and his real first name is Otto.
Right. I'll tell you.
Otto Penn.
It wasn't there. Isn't there a picture in the White House where his picture was replaced with the auto pen?
Yes.
No, it's a picture of the auto pen.
Sorry.
Pictures of presidents. Trump did that.
But this, you guys, like, we laugh about this. We laugh about this, but it is like, it is utterly terrifying to me.
Yeah.
That we don't have like like the people in the White House, regardless of whoever is in there, right? It doesn't matter to me, but that the process could be so egregiously abused. Like, this is like beyond Banana Republic stuff. This is like literally the most powerful country in the world. And we've got Dementia Joe as the president.
Yes, and we have Donald Trump arrested in Georgia in August of 2023 after being indicted on charges related to efforts to overturn the 2020 election. And now in the White House, his felony picture is sitting outside the Oval Office.
This is crazy town, guys. This is like literally, this is crazy town. It just is. You know, we got a pipe bomber situation where we can find a freaking guy on the top of a mountain in Afghanistan making pipe bombs, but we can't find a guy who was walking all over downtown Washington, D.C., putting down 2 pipe bombs on a day where we had like almost lost the republic, and the FBI doesn't know who it is. Come on. Like,
the FBI,
like literally this is Banana Republic stuff.
They're alleging that it's a female who was a Capitol Police officer.
Yeah, right.
Correct.
Yeah.
But that's based on, you know, I am hesitant to say that that's the person. It's all coming from Blaze Media. I'm not saying it's not correct. I'm just saying, like, we gotta wait. We got to wait until we have confirmation. And
Yes.
but the mere fact that 5 years later we still don't know who this is. We also don't know who built the gallows. They pulled a van up at 6 o'clock in the morning in front of the
Oh,
Capitol,
right.
unloaded a bunch of wood, built a gallows, and then drove away. No license plate reader, no facial recognition. Nobody's even talking about it. And they built a gallows on the Capitol grounds on January 6th. How does that happen unless the government's in charge of it? Like that, there's no way. There's no way. So we
Now,
have some major problems.
I'd like you to tell our audience what your trending was in counterintelligence and terrorist activity. That something did you have a feeling something would happen on that day?
No, I not on that specific day. No. What you're getting at is in October of 2020, I took a job at the DNI as a contractor, and I was the senior intelligence collection strategist for domestic extremism, which means for all intents and purposes, I had access to everything the federal government had on domestic extremists. So that means everything the FBI had, everything NSA had, everything DNI had. I had access to everything on domestic extremism in the United States. And my job was to draft two documents. The first document is an integrated collection strategy or a collection posture statement, which basically means what are our capabilities on collecting intelligence regarding domestic extremists. And I drafted that document. The other one is a collection emphasis message, or a SEM, which goes out to the collectors to go and find people who have the information we need. And it helps the NSA target groups and stuff like that. So I had access to everything, but I had been following domestic extremism for several years in various roles. So in October of 2020, I warned the FBI that I felt that we were headed into a potential black swan type event. A black swan is an event that spirals out of control, that's unanticipated, and people overreact, and it just gets worse and worse and worse, and it can become a major crisis. That's a black swan. And when I said that to the FBI Domestic Terrorism Task Force, they labeled me a domestic extremist, and they basically, instead of listening to my analysis and knowing, I knew things like the Black Panthers in the 1970s. We had the Kyle Rittenhouse situation. We had cities burning all over the country. We had the 2A movement. People have forgotten about the 2A sanctuary movement, where we were trying to get sanctuary cities where we're not going to let the federal government take everybody's guns. I was seeing sort of the fragility in the country, the vulnerability in the country, the MAGA movement being basically taken advantage of by instigators and agitators. And I tried to warn the FBI that we were headed into a potential black swan.
Do you think maybe the FBI said, "Oh crap, Thomas is onto us," because they were involved in that event, which you went to without actually knowing that was maybe
you're giving them too much credit, Penny. You're giving them too much credit. Okay. Trust me, these people are not good at this. Like, they're not professional intelligence people. They're not the CIA. Okay. The CIA is good at it. The DIA or not DIA, but the DOD is good at this stuff. We do it around the world in other countries to our benefit, to our national security benefit. So we know how to do it, right? As a country, we know how to do this. And I know how we do it. What's that?
Who orchestrated it in your estimation? Who orchestrated?
Well, I think that it's my professional analysis right now on January 6th, since we're talking about January 6th, my professional analysis is that there were people who hoped that there was violence, and there were some people who were planning to agitate or instigate violence. But I think those people were both on the right and on the left. It wasn't just one-sided. The problem was that the Capitol Police I've spoken to senior members of the Capitol Police. Most of the Capitol Police and the Metro PD that were defending the Capitol had never worked together. They didn't know. They'd never worked major crowd control. What I think happened, bottom line is, that the Capitol Police had a breakdown in communication, and they started essentially attacking the crowd with CS gas and stinger grenades. Well, the problem is the bulk of the crowd was made up by veterans and former law enforcement. So they've been trained to resist CS gas and resist stinger grenades. And so they basically got angry at the police for attacking them. And when that happened, and another thing too, and I have a video, it's on my Twitter, you can find it. The wind was blowing the CS gas back into the face of the police.
Goy.
So instead of CS gassing the crowd, the police basically CS gassed themselves.
Oh my God.
And they didn't have masks on because they don't know how to use CS gas. In the military, when we use CS gas, before we use CS gas, everybody has a gas mask on. And we're, like I said, we're trained to resist CS gas.
Even if it leaks.
What's that?
Even if the mask leaks.
Even if the mask leaks, correct. And so my point is that I think that without direct evidence of a plan, all I can say is I see evidence of a really terrible fuck up. Okay, I'm sorry. It's a black swan. Instigators and agitators took advantage of the crowd. The Capitol Police made some catastrophic mistakes. The wind was blowing in the wrong direction. And ultimately, we ended up with a crowd. And one of the principal observations that I've had, and you're not going to have heard this from anybody else, but I have spent my life studying these things around the world. What we had is a power dynamic between the Capitol Police and the crowd. The Capitol Police and the Metro PD were there. What was their job, guys? What was the Capitol Police and the Metro PD's job that day? What do you think it was?
Keep the peace.
No. It was to protect the Capitol.
Yeah.
Protect the building.
Protect the Capitol. Okay.
Right? But what was the crowd's job that day? What were they there for?
Protest.
Yeah.
No.
They're there to support the president.
Protect the Constitution.
Oh, yeah, right.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Sure.
They were there in their minds. They were there to protect the Constitution.
Okay.
And the rule of law. So there was a power dynamic between the police and the crowd, where the police were there just to protect the building and the crowd was there to protect the Constitution. So when the police CS gassed the crowd full of veterans and former law enforcement, the crowd got angry. And when the crowd got angry, it was, 20,000, 30,000, 100,000 people who were angry. And the police then broke because the CS gas blew back in their face. And so they basically ceded the ground, and then the crowd just moved forward. And that's why the crowd only entered on one side of the building. On the other side of the building, they never entered.
Mm-hmm.
Because on the other side of the building, the police dealt with the crowd differently. And so you only see the breach on the one side. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't people in the crowd that wanted it to happen. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the circumstances were optimal for that to happen. And I think that a lot of bad decisions were made that day.
So I got a question for you as well. Are you familiar with John Sullivan, who was inside the Capitol? And the film that he did with Jade from CNN, and how when they started coming into the Capitol, he said, "We did it, we did it." And then she said, you didn't record that, did you? And he gets, "It's okay, I erased it." But I saw that, so it did get out to the public.
Correct. It did get out. So that's evidence of people who wanted it to happen.
Okay.
That is evidence of people who wanted it to happen. I don't know what the plan was.
Okay.
But it is clear evidence of people wanting it to happen.
And would that also include the police officers that opened the doors and let the crowd come through to
No, I think that's mostly just out of a product of breakdown in communication. But there are some other issues that are very concerning, like, the warning signs. Like when I got to the Capitol that day, by the time I got there sometime around 2:00, I think. The violence and everything had already started at that point. But all the signs had been removed of this is, restricted area or whatever. And I had been up to the Capitol building hundreds of times, well, maybe not hundreds of times, but I had been up to the Capitol building dozens of times before that. So I never knew that there was anything restricted about where I was at all. I never knew that. And so there's some other things that happened that do lend themselves to a plan on the other side. Like, I will give you a couple of really good examples. We mentioned the pipe bomber and we mentioned the gallows. I believe that the pipe bomber situation was actually an operation run by the Capitol Police with very possibly the FBI to defuse a violent situation on the Capitol. Because what they could have said was, hey, pipe bombs have been discovered on the Capitol grounds. Everybody has to leave. Right? That would be used like a deception operation, but for a good reason. Right? To try and convince people to leave the Capitol area because pipe bombs had been discovered.
So that goes along with what Penny said, is that the potential of identifying a Capitol Police officer as one of the ones that was planting it. So that goes with that. So what you're saying is this is not a coordinate. It's kind of like what Bob was talking about with security clearance. You know what you're doing, but you don't know what anybody else is doing.
Correct. And here's another interesting thing. And you can find this on my website, right? On my website, I've got a document. It's now 137. You know what? I got to fix that link. It's not linked properly yet.
Okay.
But there's a 137-page document that I put together of a timeline from 2009 all the way to 2025. And the interesting thing about the pipe bomber is that the first pipe bomb was reported to the Capitol Police exactly 10 minutes before the first breach, and the second pipe bomb was reported like 15 minutes later. The problem with that is both of those pipe bombs had laid in the grass for 16 hours, and they weren't reported until there was a breach on the Capitol. That, to me, is an indication of something that was deliberate.
Okay.
Strategize because perhaps they knew that there would be a breach upon the Capitol. We're encroaching the end of this segment. I'd like to ask people for where they can be found and some very short final comments. Bob Pullen, what would you like to say?
Well, I can be reached at repullen@comcast.net. I don't have a website. I don't have a need for one at this point. I might have to get one. Mr. Speciale, I really enjoyed this. I wish we could sit down and smoke a cigar, but I'm afraid it would turn me as green as my front yard because I haven't had one in so long. But I'd be willing to try, But I've enjoyed it very much.
Thank you so much, Bob. And Skip Press?
Skip Press on X and skippress.com. And I just want to say this is one of the most enjoyable Agent X11 I've ever done. So thank you, Thomas and Bob, everybody.
Absolutely. I think Bob is he's one of the team now. We'll be bringing him back after his vacation, and he has a couple other things that he has to attend to. Joan Renee, final comments, and where can people find you?
Well, I'm just going to kudos and double ditto on what Skip and Bob have said as well. I think that a lot of information came out in this conversation that a lot of people may not have considered. And critical thinking is something that has kind of gone to the wayside in the past, but it definitely is coming forward in this presentation, and I hope people do watch it. We lost him.
Okay, then. Well, I don't get a chance to say to Thomas how wonderful he was, but hopefully he'll watch this segment afterwards. And I do want to thank each and every one of you for being co-hosts and for just always being there for me. Joan Renee and Skip Press, You're always there for me, and I love you guys. And Bob, I'm sure we're going to pull you, Bob Pullen, we're going to pull you in
Right. Yeah.
as well. Everyone loves you, and very thoughtful and intelligent questions from the entire team. So I do want to encourage you to please watch the Awake Nation. Tomorrow, we're going to have David Zublik, and he changed the hours of his show. They're now from 8 till 10. He does an Awake Nation commentary. I'm just going to play his promo real quick. It's about 41 seconds.
Could you look at you? Hey, 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 damn straight, I got something to say. Ain't saving it for a rainy day. Damn straight, I'm mad, we've all been had. History's lies, man, it's making me mad. Boy, I'm ready to fight. Awaken nation, we're breaking bad to ooh night.
Is the Damn Straight Weekend Update. You can find it on the David Zublik. Oh, look,
Sorry about that.
You can find it on the David Zublik channel on Rumble. And Thomas, you were out for my saying thank you so very much. We will be in meetings with Thomas to assist on doing a documentary for him. And I thank you for all that you're doing. I thank you for your disclosures. I especially thank you for getting John Brennan pissed. That's a favor to me. And I really appreciate everything that you're doing and everything that this team is doing, everything that Awake Nation is doing. We try to present the information. No one has all the answers. I know I certainly don't. As I quite often say, I know a little about a lot and a lot about a little. And sometimes those are consequential and sometimes they're inconsequential. But the only way that we find out the truth is by sharing the information with one another and you know, in a respectful manner. Unfortunately, the Democrats have gone beyond the realm of control, and they have no capacity for conversation, as we saw in the murder of Charlie Kirk. I hope that we can stop some of those things from happening by engaging in conversation with one another and by trying to spread the truth as best as we know it. As always, I encourage you to please research everything. Don't accept anything that you hear. And I'm going to do the X-Files thing. Pretty much don't trust anybody, especially in the MSN. And unfortunately, there are some people that we can trust in the government arena. I'm not sure who they are right now, but vet everything and everyone. I thank you for joining us. You can find me on X at Shepherd Out. Apparently I was in, now I'm out, but I'm in again because they pulled me back in. And then also please watch us on the Awake Nation on the David Zublik channel, Monday through Friday. That's 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. We do the Awake Nation news, and 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. we do commentaries and we have guest interviews. Thank you again for joining us, but we're out of time, so we are out of here. Shepherd out.
Skip out.
Renee out.
Pulling out.
Time out.
There we go.
Oh, we did it.
Where I am. So like everyone out because they're like, what?
We're out of here.
Goodbye for today from Agent X11, Hollywood Dark Journalist. We post new episodes daily. Check out our true crime episodes Wednesdays and Fridays. Don't forget to watch our main show, David Zubrick's Awake Nation, on the David Zubrick channel on Rumble, live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern.